is 3:30. Good afternoon, and welcome to the last Schoolnet webinar for this school year for item banks. I do apologize for having to reschedule this to today when it was earlier in the month, and I've made a note to make sure that the last one is more towards the beginning of May, just because of testing and all the other things that are happening in schools. So I appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with us. I am putting the slide deck in the chat for those of you that have just recently joined, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So I am going to cut my video. Um, um, if I can find my button, there we go. All right, and let's go ahead and get started. So like I mentioned before, this is the last Schoolnet webinar for this school year, and this one is specifically talking about item banks and the different item banks that you have within the platform. I am going to be in the live site as well as the training site today, so I encourage you to be in your live site as well. But of course, if that is not an option, I will be sharing this recording and this slide deck with you in an email, so you'll have it to be able to reference anytime that you need. Okay. So first thing, Catherine Simone is usually with us, but she was unable to make it today. She is the implementation manager for Pearson. Her email address is located right there. She is extremely helpful with all things Schoolnet. So we normally have her. So if you've been on any of our other webinars, then you are familiar with who she is. My name is Rebecca Stokes. I'm the product manager for NCDPI, and my email address is located on this screen as well. Please feel free at any time that you have a question with anything dealing with Schoolnet, please feel free to reach out to me. I am happy to help however I can. All right, so first thing is just a little bit of housekeeping. First is CEU questions. So by attending these webinars, you will receive zero point 0.1 CEUs, which is equivalent to 1 hour of credit. And just remember that you need 10 hours of credit to equal one whole CEU. And for participating in the live session, you do get those CEU credits. And I'm going to put the slide deck in the chat for those of you that have just joined, trying to keep an eye on both of those. The type of credit that you actually get is determined by your school or district, so you just want to make sure that you're following your district's approval process. So I will send you a certificate with the title of the session and the zero point 0.1 CEUs and the date. So then you just want to make sure that you follow your district's guidelines for turning in those CEUs. Okay, so you must be logged in to the live webinar for the entirety of the webinar. Of course, after the session is over, I'll usually hang out for any questions, so please feel free to leave at that time, but just the entirety of the webinar up until we say that we are finished and we tell everyone to have a good day. But of course, you don't have to stay on for those additional questions if that doesn't work with your schedule. Okay. All right, get my mouse back over here. Okay, so we are using WebEx. We are going to use a different platform next year. So with WebEx, you are unfortunately not able to unmute. So I do encourage you to use the chat. I will be using the chat, monitoring it just for any questions that might come up throughout the session. So please feel free to ask any questions that you have. If you don't feel comfortable asking a question in the chat, then of course feel free to email me after the session. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Put the slide deck back in there. There we go. All right. So again, thank you for being here, especially as late in May as it is. I know that school is either out for you already, or it is winding down, or you're in testing. So I know it's an extremely busy part of the year. So I appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us for this session. All right, here is our agenda for today. We're going to talk about the item banks that are in Schoolnet and some uses for those item banks. Also going to show you how you can create your own item bank or how to add items that you may like in the item banks that we already have. You can add those to your own personal bank for future use. And then you can also save your favorite items and copy multiple items from an assessment onto a new test in one click. So just a few kind of time-saving things with your favorite questions within the item banks. Okay. There we go. All right, so first thing, I'm going to actually hop out of the slide deck and go into the live site just so we can explain what all of these item banks are, because a lot of times we see them, but we don't necessarily know what they are or where they come from. So I wanted to explain all of that. So let me hop into the live site. And if at any time I am not showing the correct screen, please make sure to tell me in the chat. With Catherine not here today, I don't have my usual person that's able to let me know that I'm not sharing the right thing. So, okay. So first thing that I want to show you is I'm going to go to a teacher view in Schoolnet. So this right here is called the splash page. This is where I post a lot of information that you might need to know with Schoolnet. Like for example, we have our copyright information. We also have all of our webinars, which is hopefully where you were able to register for today's session. But if you scroll down, you're going to see this document right here, this NC item bank counts. So I'm going to explain what all the item banks are, and then we're going to reference this item bank counts right here, okay? So on the left-hand side in Schoolnet, in my dashboard, I'm going to go to the Assessments tab. And I'm going to click this down arrow here and I'm going to go to item banks. Now, some of the ones that you're going to see on my screen are not viewable to you. So I'm going to just show you the ones that you do have access to, okay? So the first one is a personal bank. So it's going to have a little heart on it, which defaults it to be the first thing that you see. This is your personal bank. No one else has access to this other than you unless you share it with them. Okay, so we're going to talk today about the personal bank and how you can add questions to this bank for future use. But just know that this is yours. The next bank that we have is the 2013 through 16 Schoolnet item bank. So these are questions just from miscellaneous sources. So you can see that it's Aquila, Pearson, and then just other miscellaneous writers. So these are older questions. So while they are here, of course, for practice for your students and they are aligned to your standards, they're not necessarily the first ones that I would choose from when I am creating an assessment for my students. Again, they are aligned to your standards, but they're just older. So it might be questions that your students have seen previously, and just the writing might not be the same as what they would be familiar with on the end of grade test. So while they are great for practice, and if you ran out of questions, but again, personally, as a former classroom teacher, just might not be my first choice, okay? The next one, we're going to skip over a few of these because you would not see those. The next one we're going to talk about is this key data system. So there is a key data systems item bank and there's a key data systems Spanish. So of course the Spanish one, those are all questions that are written strictly in Spanish, okay? So there are fewer of those, but we have requested more. So if you have students who are Spanish speaking and Spanish reading, you can use these, but just know they're written in Spanish. So unless you copied them and put them into Google Translate or you are speaking Spanish yourself, you might not necessarily know what it says. So just kind of want to put that out there. They are written in Spanish, okay? But this bank right here, the Key Data Systems Bank, this is one that we purchase for PSUs to use. It is from the company Renaissance. So if you are elementary, you might be familiar with Accelerated Reader, or there's Accelerated Math as well, Star Reader. All of those programs are owned by this same company. So this year, we kind of had to do a quick switch to this bank. So this year we did not have science questions offered in this bank, but next year we will have science questions written in this bank. So this is where all of your technology enhanced items are going to be housed. So any of you that are wanting practice for technology enhanced items, you're going to want to make sure that you're selecting questions from this particular bank. Okay. And I just posted the slide deck in the chat for those of you that have just joined in. All right, if you are a CTE teacher, then you have your own bank. It's the NC CTE unsecured bank. So these are only CTE items. This is the only bank you will find those in. And they are updated every year by the CTE department based off of the courses. So if you are a CTE teacher and your standards have changed, then you will not see questions for your course those first 2 years after they changed. And if your course is also the performance based, then you will not see questions for that course as well. But I would be happy to provide more details of what courses are actually contained in that CTE bank. So if you just want to send me an email and let me know, or on the item bank counts, I'll be able to show you that as well. Okay, the next bank that you'll see is math sets. So these are just math sets that are provided from NCDPI. You can see they are fewer as well. This bank, unless you have leadership rights, you are not going to see. So this is a benchmark bank, and this is only available to leadership roles. And the purpose of this is to be able to create benchmarks for the students to take with questions that they wouldn't have seen previously. So just trying to make sure that the data is correct and couldn't be skewed because of them seeing those questions previously. So you would not see that benchmark bank if you are listed as a teacher or staff role. Okay, but the one that you will see is the NCDPI Classroom Bank. So I'm going to pause here for just a second just to explain what this means. So it does say NCDPI, but this is from the content writers that write the questions for the end of grade and end of course assessments. Okay, so these questions are sent to us from them. So they might be ones that were in the pool of choices for assessments that just didn't get selected to be on the end of grade assessments. So they let us have them. So they are written by the same people. They're going to have the same verbiage. They're going to have the same formatting. They're going to look the same as what your students are seeing at the end of the year. But one thing about this bank is it's only going to be multiple choice and there's a few open response. So there are no technology enhanced items in this bank, which is why you would want to use the Key Data Systems bank here for any technology enhanced item that you wanted students to practice. And of course, you can use the NC Test app because I know they have sample questions on there as well. But for all of your multiple choice questions, those are going to be from this classroom bank. Okay. There's also a released bank. This contains items that are on the released EOGs and EOCs that are on NCDPI's website. It does not contain ELA. It is only going to be math and science, I believe. I know that there's no ELA. There might be some social studies in there as well. The ELA is not going to be there because of copyright. So we're not allowed to have those released items or the release tests themselves in Schoolnet due to copyright. You also will not see this NCFE bank, so I'm going to skip over that one. And then the other one that you're going to see is a TEI converted item. So before we purchased the Key Data Systems Bank for the technology enhanced items, we were starting to convert questions ourselves from the classroom bank. So this is multiple choice questions that have been converted into technology enhanced items from that classroom bank. And the description for all of these is listed underneath it, but I just like to kind of go a little bit more in detail. So now that we've seen the ones that we have available to us, I want to show you the counts. So let me go back home. Okay, so if I am in the splash page, if I scroll down past the webinars, then I'm going to see the item bank counts in Schoolnet. Okay. So what this is going to do is at the very bottom, you're going to see tabs of all of the item banks that you should see. But just remember, you are not going to see the benchmark bank, okay? For the DPI and the KDS, you are going to have an additional tab that says content updates. This is just letting you know the date that we got new questions and which courses we got questions for. So we get content uploads from DPI for the classroom and benchmark bank twice a year. So you can kind of see August and then January, and then we got them a little bit earlier this year in July and then in January. So we get them twice a year. So hopefully we get this year's questions in July as well. But you can see that they will provide the number of items that were given for the classroom bank, and then you'll be able to see what subject that was for. Okay, so they have told us that when they give us the new upload in July, that will include science questions that are aligned to the new science standards. So if you are teaching science, we will be getting new questions aligned to the new standards for you to use. I'm going to hop over the benchmark bank just because that one's not going to be seen by teachers. But if you are a leadership role, then you'll be able to see how many items we have total in that bank for ELA, math, science, and social studies. If I hop over to the classroom bank, again, this is going to give you totals of what we have. So you can see we have higher numbers in our upper grades for ELA and math, and science, it looks like too. But as we get new questions, this will be updated. Okay, and you can just do the same thing for KDS. Again, this year we did not have science, which is why you do not see a science block, but you will see that after this year, but just kind of lets you know how many items we have. And with the KDS, the technology enhanced, so you'll be able to see like gap match. You can see how many we have per grade level for that particular subject for the technology enhanced. Okay, and if I happen to have any CTE teachers on this call, I'm going to hop over to the CTE bank, and this lets you know which courses we were given questions for. Okay, so we can only put the questions that we are given, and they only give us for these particular courses. Okay, so if you teach a course that is not listed here, then please feel free to reach out to the CTE department because we do not have any control over what they send us. All we can do is upload them, okay? All right, I don't have any questions in the chat. Just in case somebody new popped in, I'm gonna put that slide deck back in there. So let's hop back over to the slide deck. Okay, and I already went through all of this, so I just personally like to show it instead of just reading it from the screen. But some uses for these item banks. Of course, the classroom banks are organized by your course or grade level. So of course, for you to make formative assessments or summative assessments from these item banks, you can share a bank within a grade level or PLC or subject area. So you can create your own bank and favorite items or create your own items, and you can add people to them and share those items with people within your school, or if you are working with a teacher who's at another school but the same grade level, then you could share it with them as well. Okay, you can also share banks at the district level. So if all of the third grade teachers in a district wanted to share a bank of questions that they've created or that they particularly liked, then you could have an entire third grade for the entire district item bank that you could share. Excuse me. You also can have item banks for beginning teacher support. So if you're a mentor teacher and you teach the same grade level or subject as your mentee, then you could create an item bank to share with them where you're putting in questions that you are personally using just to kind of help out a little bit. You know, because as beginning teachers, we can use as much support as we can get. So that's another way that you could use them. And then, of course, if you are in a leadership role, you could have a item bank that's private to you or your district that you use for benchmarks. All right, so I'm going to show you how you can create your own item bank. So it kind of goes over the screenshots here, but again, I'm going to go to the live site to do this. So drink this down. And I'm going to go to there we go. I'm in the training site. Okay, so if I come over to the assessments tab and I click on item banks, and it loads eventually. The training site always does this. I might have to go to the live site if it's going to go that slowly. There we go. Okay. So right under where it says item banks, over on the right-hand side, you can see where it says create a new bank. So I can click this, and this is where I could have, fourth grade PLC item bank, and then shared item bank with fourth grade teachers, right? So the sharing settings, so you can kind of hover over this little information. You are able to give someone view only rights, meaning that they can only view it. They can't edit it. They can't add things to it. They can view the items, okay? Um, and they can add them to their own assessments, but they can't affect the bank at all. They can't take anything out or add anything to it. If you give someone view and edit rights, then they are able to edit items, rubrics, and passages, and they can also move them out and move them to another bank. Okay, and then manage is giving someone the right to be able to delete the bank altogether. So if you create it, then you are the manager of it. But if you know that you are leaving the school or leaving the district, and you don't want your fellow teachers to lose access to that item bank, you can make someone else a manager of it, so that when you leave, then someone else still has access to continue going with that item bank. Okay, so right now, me as this sample teacher, I am the owner, but I can add people. So it's going to pull users from my school. Okay, but if I'm in a district, I can choose a different school if I know that there's a teacher at a different school that I'm working with, and collaborating with. So it's going to default to my own personal school, but you can choose a different school. I don't know of any fake people in here. See, something just came up. There we go, Jasmine. Okay, so Jasmine is a teacher at my sample school that I'm working with, and we're building assessments together. So I can choose to give her view and edit rights, or I can do view only, or make them a manager as well. Okay, so you can choose whichever one of these you want. If I am going throughout the year and this person leaves or moves grade levels, because we know that has happened in the middle of the year before, I can always go in and hit this trash can, and they no longer have access to that item bank. Okay, so I'm going to click Create Bank. And now, once it finishes loading, you can see that my item bank has been successfully saved, and I can see it right here. There's my description, who the owner is, and I can manage and add additional users to this bank as well. One thing I forgot to mention earlier when I was showing you the item banks is right beside the manage button, you're going to see this checkbox. Where it's going to search any of the item banks that are checked within this list. So if you know that you never want questions from this fourth grade PLC item bank, then you can uncheck it. And anytime that you are putting in your standards to search for questions, it will never search this bank. So if there's ever a bank that you don't want questions from, you can just check that box and it will no longer search that item bank for questions. The one thing that I forgot to mention there. Okay, so that is how you can create your own bank. And I want to go back here just to make sure that I am staying on course with this. I have been known to kind of go off and not in order. So I wanted to fix that. So we went over how to create the bank. So this is adding items to a bank. So I'm going to need to build an assessment in order to show you how you can add items to an item bank. Okay, so let me go back out and go back to the training site. Okay, so let me create an assessment and I always, we can do math. And I'm not going to go over all of the settings and things because that would have been in a different session. So I'm just going to go through. I'm not going to change any of these things. I'm just going to generate the test to be able to choose questions. Okay. So when you're choosing questions, this is where you can select the banks that you want to pull questions from. So if I click select banks, then I could say I wanted it to pull from my fourth grade PLC item bank, or I could do the key data systems and the classroom, because then it's not going to pull from any of the other ones. And when you have it unchecked, then it's not going to show up here. So I did not have the Schoolnet, it was like the 2013, 2016 Schoolnet item bank. I did not have that one checked in the list for that blue box that I just showed you. So it does not show here. So only the ones that you have checked as you want to be searched are going to show in this list. And then you can even select for the particular test you're making where you want questions pulled from. So I'm going to select those banks. And I'm just going to pick a standard. Let's see, end of the year is usually when we were doing measurement. I'm sure that is no longer the pacing guide that is followed, but that's just what I'm going to choose. So I'm going to choose the whole standard, and I'm just going to select some questions real quick. Okay, so I've got those 4 items. Let me add that to my test. Okay, I'm going to go through and just save all these in a normal setting. I would have previewed all of these, but just for this example of saving, I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, so currently, these are all questions that are linked to another bank. So if I were to finalize this test, I would not be able to save them. But if I really like these questions, and I know that next year when I am building an assessment that I want to create a new assessment, but I want to create it with these questions that I really liked, because you can copy assessments from one year to another. I'm going to go back to editing, and right here underneath the type of question, you see it says that this is from an item bank, and there's this blue button that says unlink. Okay. If I click unlink, this is now my question. I can make any changes to this if I wanted to change the names. If there were names in this question and I wanted it to be my students' names, I can make any edits that I would like. Okay. So I'm going to only unlink the first 2. I'm going to leave the bottom 2 linked to the item bank. You can see this one still says unlink, where question 2, it now does not. Okay. So I'm going to return to my test details. Okay, so questions 1 and 2 are unlinked. Questions 3 and 4 are not. So now when I finalize my test, I'm ready to give it to my students. It's going to ask if I'm sure. You're going to see right here where it says add all items to item bank. Okay, it is not going to add the items that we did not unlink. So questions 3 and 4 will not be added to my item bank. But if I click this, then I can choose which bank I want it to be added to. So I'm going to add these to my fourth grade PLC item bank that I created. And now when I go and view that, I should have 2 questions in that item bank. If I go to my item bank, my fourth grade, you can see I have 2 items. And it's question 1 and question 2. So when I clicked unlink, it became mine, and then I can save it. And this could be the item bank that I'm sharing with the new teacher that I'm a mentor for. This could be questions that our fourth grade team is going to build assessments from later in the year or next year, however it is you want to do it. But there is a way for you to save questions even if you weren't the creator of the question itself. Okay. All right. So again, go back here. Okay. And within the slide deck, it's giving you screenshots of how to do all of this. Um, I just prefer to show it to you in the live view. Okay, let's see. So you also can save your favorite items from the list of questions. So let me go back to, it's kind of giving you the same directions of unlinking, but it's just a different process. So if I go back to my test, see if I can find it. There we go. So since I finalized this, I don't think I can make changes. Let's see. Perfect. Yes, I can. Okay, so here is my test. Let's say I wanted to add question 3 and 4 now to my item bank. I can click here because I've already finalized it. So it's not going to give me that option of adding all of these items to the item bank anymore. But I can come to this drop down beside question 3 and I can click modify. And then it's going to give me the option to unlink it. So I'm going to do the same thing for question 4. And now you see add all items to the item bank. So if you finalize your test and you save questions and then you go back and you're like, oh, I really wish I had saved these other ones. If you modify them, then you will be able to do the same process. So I can add all those items. I can add it to my fourth grade PLC, save it to the bank, and now I should have 4 total questions in my item bank. Fourth grade, I now have all 4 items. Okay. So this will not work once the test has been scheduled for students. Okay, so you would have to make a copy of the test and then you could go in and unlink them. But once a student has submitted data, you can't go in and change the questions. Actually, now that I'm saying that, I think you can actually go in and save the questions, but it'll give you a warning saying that it could like mess up the students that are taking the test. So I definitely don't recommend doing that while the test is active. You can do so after the fact. Okay. Okay. So if you wanted to copy multiple test items and add them to a test for future use, instead of copying the entire assessment, if you knew that you didn't want all of the questions, you just wanted a few of them, then you can copy multiple items and then add them to a test. So let me hop back out, go back in here. Okay, let's see. I think I actually have to do it. Oh, there we go. Yep, we have to do it in the item detail tab. So on the test details page, when you click on your test, it's going to default to this item summary, which is where we saw the add multiple items to an item bank. But if you click on item details, the tab right beside it, then you'll see this copy multiple items. So I can click copy multiple items, go in, and let's say I just wanted questions 1 and 2. Okay, then I can click copy selected items. And it's going to say, are you sure? Yes. And then I can either create a new test with these items, or if I have a test that I want to add them to, then I can come over here and select the test that I want it to be added to. Okay. But it doesn't look like in my fake class I have any fourth grade. Oh, I do have a fourth grade right here. It's English language and literature when these were math questions, but I can add it to this kindergarten test right here. So I'll select this one. It's going to ask if I am sure. Yes, I am sure. So now my kindergarten test is going to open and I should see, let's see, these are all kindergarten standards. Good gracious, this was a large test. Good gracious. But here's my two fourth grade questions that I just added to it. So that's a way for you to copy it and add it to an additional test. Okay. Doesn't look like I have any questions in the chat at the moment. So anytime you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. So that was all that I had. That was a quick run through there because it's only 4:05. So, okay. Well, let me go over a few additional support things that we have, and then I'll open it up for any questions that you guys might have. Go through here. So we always have these links at the end of our webinars, but I know myself when I am in a session, I can't necessarily find the links to the slide decks afterwards. Okay, so all of these things are actually linked on the splash page. So I'm actually going to go there instead. So the things that we have linked at the end there were things like the item bank counts. We have a quick reference document for science realignment, but this one right here, the quick reference documents for Schoolnet, if you click there, is actually going to take you to all of our quick reference documents that we have for the system. So you can kind of see the category right here on the left, but if you needed to know how to schedule an assessment, you'll see scheduling assessments right here. You can click on this link and it's going to open up a PDF for you that gives you screenshots and step-by-step directions on how to complete the task that you are looking for. Okay. We also, if you scroll down, we have all of our slide decks from our webinars. And I think it actually goes back to 2019. So we post all of the webinar links in here as well as the slide decks from previous presentations. Okay. So that is also on your splash page. Technology enhanced item correlation. If you wanted to create your own questions or convert your own questions, there's help guides there as well. So those are just things that we included at the end of the webinar. But if you aren't able to access it because you can't find the slide deck link itself, then we have all of this on the splash page for you. Okay. And then I think the last thing was just going over the webinars, but this was the last webinar for this school year. So this concludes this entire series. So thank you for any of you that attended the previous ones, and I hope that you will attend some next year. We are going to have several that are more content based. That was based off of feedback from the field. So we might have one month that is specific to ELA teachers, math teachers, etc. So these will change next year, will not be the same. We'll probably have a few of the same type of sessions, but we're going to have a lot more content specific questions as well, or webinars. So, now is the time that I am going to open this up for any questions that you may have. Let me cut this back on. If you don't have any questions, then I thank you for joining me for this quicker than usual session. I'm going to blame it on Catherine that since she wasn't here with me to discuss and talk about things that I just talked really fast. So I apologize for talking fast, but I am happy to give you some of your time back this afternoon. But I appreciate you being with me. I'm going to hang out for any questions that you may have, and you will receive an email from me within the next 2 days. Well, tomorrow's Friday. So you'll receive an email from me by Tuesday, um, or the end of Tuesday with your CEU certificate, the recording of this session, and the slide deck link. Okay. But I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And like I said, I'm going to hang out here for a few minutes for anyone that might have a question. But if you don't, then I hope you have a great rest of your day and great rest of your school year as well. Thank you so much for being with me.